Whiskey Business is a podcast not so much about whiskey as it is one with whiskey. Thank you for listening. If you're streaming on your favorite podcasting platform, go ahead and click subscribe, follow, like, high five, whatever. If you're on iTunes, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and a review. Whiskey Business with Dino Tripodis is on YouTube, where you can see the complete unedited podcast recording. Smash that subscribe button, click that little notification bell, and you'll get an alert every time we post a new episode. Facebook, Instagram, X, and keep your eye out for us at the 2024 Paris Olympics. One of the best ways we can grow our podcast is by word of mouth and recommendations. So please recommend Whiskey Business to fellow podcast enthusiasts, whiskey fans, friends, family, and even enemies. Their download counts as well. And a special shout out to Jephthah Creed, who's providing the guest bottle for this episode.
Hi, Dino Tripodis, back with part 2 of me being the guest on my own podcast as we dig more into the Just Sweats case from 1988. And this is Whiskey Business, the podcast not so much about whiskey as it is one with whiskey. In part 1, give me that empty bottle, Bill. Bill brought the remnants of a bottle called Still Austin, which was excellent. Where'd you get this?
Seal box.
Mail
order. Bourbon.
Okay.
A disclaimer,
Nice.
It was not full when it came in.
No.
No, but I wanted you to have it on the show because you'll never have it again.
Yeah.
No, you never
we
will.
did kill it. We
It's
Still
hard to
awesome.
find here, and it's
Very good.
barrel
And-
strength. It was good.
And a weird thing, I don't know if it's just me, it almost had it reminded me of gin. Did anybody else have a little gin flavor?
A gin,
hate gin.
a gin moment? No, I did not.
I did not.
Okay, all right.
And then
That
for
was
part,
the mushrooms, Greg.
mushrooms on the pizza from Gatto's Pizza.
Yeah, the pizza mushroom.
This is Jephthah Creed. This is a rye bourbon mash bill, and this was generously sent to us from Jephthah Creed, who was supposed to be on the podcast. One of their distillers was supposed to be coming into town and was going to be a guest on our podcast. The event got canceled. The distiller did not come to town, but they generously said, "Can we still send you a bottle?" And I said, "Send us a bottle, and we'll give it some love on one of our upcoming podcasts." So this is the Jephthah Creed
It's good.
rye bourbon mash bill, my 2 favorite things in the world. And I've not yet tried it. Have you tried it?
Yes, it's very good. Try it right now. You
I
guys.
tried.
The,
I tried it. It's really
Either
good. I really liked
the
it.
owner or the distiller, I'm not 100% sure. Female. They've got a strong female presence at the top of.
Oh shit.
Yeah, the distiller that was supposed to be on our show was a female. And
gotta
and
get
her
them
name
on the
escapes
podcast.
me.
I know.
And that is pretty good. That is pretty smooth.
Yeah, that explains how awesome it is.
It is really good.
Let's be out.
We got a couple of friends in the background. Did you guys try this? Did you pour some of this?
Not yet.
Okay, try this. Try some of this before you leave tonight, and tell me your thoughts as we continue. Part 2 of this saga. Which, if you're just joining part 2, go back and listen to part 1. But one thing we should probably say from the get-go is I think you're a little surprised that I was not in the loop with as much as you think I was in the loop with. That I was very focused on one thing and one thing particularly, and found out a lot of information as a result of that one thing, which was Eric DeSando.
Yeah, if you didn't listen to part 1, it kind of reminded me of Charles Emerson Winchester III. Dino did one thing, did it well, and then he moved on.
And then he moved on.
And
Were
don't
you
forget,
gonna-
part 1 and 2
were
was
you
brought
gonna
to you
get
by
paid-
Gatto's Pizza.
Yeah, gotta get a Gatto's.
Gotta get a Gatto's.
Pizza. Oh yeah. Were you gonna get paid how did
Bounty?
You, yeah, well, yeah.
Reward
I mean-
money?
I mean, basically,
No.
you were just getting paid hourly whether
Yeah.
you brought the guy in or not.
Yeah.
That would go to the company, I would believe.
And as much as I should have been concerned about money at that point in my life, I really wasn't. I was more fascinated with what was going on. I mean, I selfishly wanted to find Hawkins, and got so close so many times under the pretext that I thought he was innocent, and got people to talk to me because of that. Now, granted, in hindsight, a bit deceptive. But hell, we're talking about, once I started to get things together, and Eric DeSando told me all the things that he said, and the investigation was taking place in Los Angeles, a botched investigation, by the way, which we'll get to here in just a second. Now we're talking about an innocent man who was killed to replace another man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we haven't touched that part.
whatever I did or said in order to find the people involved, I was just
white lie.
doing my job.
So let's start on the West Coast with this episode, Dino. And Dr. Richard Boggs. Dr. Boggs allegedly had a failed marriage and started frequenting what were referred to at the time, quite simply, as gay bars,
Gay bars, yep.
and befriended Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Hansen.
Yes.
At some point in time, they came up with the idea that they were going to defraud the insurance company by taking a cadaver, saying that it was Melvin Hansen, who had
Right.
told everyone here in Columbus he was going to die,
Right.
had already previously sworn out an affidavit that told Mr. Hawkins he was allowed to incinerate his body
Cremate the body, which he did quickly.
and do a cremation and spread his ashes at sea.
Yep, which he did.
So walk the listeners through what you found and what unraveled in Los Angeles.
They were supposed to get a John Doe cadaver, basically from a private morgue.
Okay.
That's the way I understood it to be. That was the plan.
And Dr. Richard Boggs, a neurologist, would have access to.
Correct, because he worked in various facilities and had the access to. But that wasn't moving along quickly enough to suit their needs, so they started to panic.
Were
So-
there financial problems that were reported in Columbus, Ohio at the time?
Don't know about the financial problems. All I know is, like I said, is that the plan was to, when you look at it in hindsight, was to find a body
Okay.
that could substitute and be Melvin Hansen. Initially, go to a private morgue, find something suitable, claim it's Melvin Hansen, incinerate the body, get the insurance money, call it a day. That wasn't happening. So they started to look for somebody that looked like Melvin Hansen. And they started to float around the gay bars. And that's where they met poor Ellis Green, who also was from Ohio.
I did not know that.
Ellis Green was also from Ohio. Yes,
Now,
he
were you
was.
aware that Dr. Boggs had tried to bring another person
Yes.
from a local establishment? What can you tell the listeners about that?
I believe a gentleman by the last name of Pomeroy.
Pomeroy?
Yeah. Tried to bring somebody in the office and escaped with his life. He got away.
Did
And
they
didn't
try?
but he didn't file charges.
He did file charges, and the investigators, at least according to Insured for Murder,
Or
by-
dropped the charges. Which was
Dropped
it?
the charges.
He dropped the charges.
because the investigators thought it was just a lover's tiff
There you
between the doctor
That is-
and someone he picked up.
So what did they do to him? Just beat him up? Or?
Dr. Boggs had a stun gun
Oh,
at the time that he used,
as one does.
as one normally does, and actually that was used to tie him to the ultimate murder of Ellis Green because it was found in his clothing, and the police used that based on the prior complaint that was filed. What, if anything, did you find out about Dr. Richard Boggs during the course of your investigation here in Columbus, Ohio?
Only thing I knew about Dr. Boggs is what Eric DeSander told me. That, again, alleged was he in love with John Hawkins as well? Was Hansen in love with John Hawkins? I know Hansen was. Was Boggs as well? Don't know. But Boggs seemed to do whatever Hansen and Hawkins wanted and aimed to please. And also Boggs was also having some financial problems as well. His practice was going under. He had gone from being a respected physician to wherever he was at this particular time after his divorce and so forth and so on. He kind of like took the slide.
So he was clearly in on the insurance fraud to find a body or a cadaver.
He claims that he wasn't, but yeah, he was.
He was going to get a cut.
Yes. He was certainly going to get a cut.
Can I ask a real quick question? It seems like
Objection.
it seems like there's a lot of energy being put into this. How much was this insurance payout going to actually be for?
I think it would have ended up being about $3 million.
Okay, well, there you go.
And some change.
He had applied for multiple insurance policies. Some of them were turned down. The first $1 million paid out. The second $500,000 did not pay out. There were some smaller policies that they applied for, were turned down, and Mr. Hawkins never followed up as this all unraveled.
There is one story that says that one check went to the wrong address and got sent back.
And got sent back and got canceled.
Correct. Canceled.
Correct.
Yeah. Oops. The post office.
So, what did you find about the investigation in L.A., which is really the focus of Cheating Death by Edward Chen, as opposed to the investigative reporters for the Columbus Dispatch?
As in respects to
what was happening with the police force in L.A. as to the alleged murder?
It was a very quick, sloppy investigation, and they signed off on the body of Ellis Green being Melvin Hansen.
And that was based on the identification by whom?
The coroner.
Anyone else?
I don't know.
Okay. Did John Hawkins fly out to identify the body?
Oh, John Hawkins flew out. Yeah, John Hawkins flew out immediately, identified the body, and and so, yes, that's him. That's him. And the body was cremated, and he quickly dismissed it, and did the ashes and spread them into the water, just like you said.
Now, did you ever look into the medical records that Dr. Boggs had, in which he claimed that Gene Hansen was his client, and he called and said he had heart problems and an elephant sitting on his chest?
Yeah. The phone calls that happened in the wee hours of the morning, and then if this that was one of the big things, one of the big red flags, that if this call came in, and he went to the office at 3:00 in the morning, and then time of death and the times weren't matching up. That was one of the big flags.
The coroner's time of death by looking at the liver did not match up
with the time that Boggs called and said that I have a patient who's died in my office. Yeah, those times didn't match up. And yet still, nothing. Body released, cremated, and so forth and so on.
So how did they kill him? Actually, did we talk about that? Did I miss something?
We didn't talk about that in episode 1, but we're going to get to that in episode 2.
Okay, all right, sorry.
It was a very probing question, Mr. Tripodis. Could you enlighten your listeners?
That how Ellis Green was killed?
Yes, sir.
In the same kind of manner that they tried to kill Pomeroy. I've heard different things. One, the stun gun thing. I also heard
electrocution with
the
EKG machine.
EKG machine, the EKG
that
paddles.
Wasn't grounded.
Right. That's the one that seems to land. That's the one that I've always gone with, and killed him that way.
So, in your investigative background, did you believe that Dr. Boggs was suffering from such financial straits that he had to do this to get money to survive?
Yeah, I do, but I also think that he was, in for a penny, in for a pound, as they say, at that point, right? Because there was a lot of money that was involved, and he was supposed to get his cut of everything.
Now, going back to episode 1 and your interviews with Mr. DeSandro, who was John B. Hawkins' roommate, and him being a true believer, John Hawkins told DeSandro repeatedly, and DeSandro repeated, I'm sure, to you, that John was not in on this. There was not supposed to be a murder. They were supposed to use a cadaver and just fake a death to claim the insurance money. Mm-hmm. No one was supposed to die.
Right. But also, Hawkins also confessed to DeSandro that Gene's not dead. He told DeSandro, Gene's not dead. And that happened in an interview with me, where he told me that he said that Gene's not dead.
And it led to our favorite name from episode 1, Wolfgang. Wolfgang von Schnauden.
Both of them had books. All right, here's some of the minutia. Both of them had books. Books were found on how to change your identity. multiple passports. No, there are books you can get.
Actual library books.
Actual library books on how to change your identity.
I love it.
You can get books.
It's like a Simpsons goof.
And they did.
How to commit fraud.
They-
How to escape from
Yes.
the
and how to do so, and that's what they followed all the steps. They did their homework and got various identities. Wolfgang von Schnauden being one of them, which I just still find comical to this day. I mean, let me find a nice subtle name
Right,
that doesn't
no one will-
stand out.
They came up with that name after a huge bong rip.
So let's.
I actually went down to Florida at one point once we got found out that the condo.
This was after you found the lease in the garbage bag?
right, yeah. I went down to Florida to check.
Who'd you
things
speak with in Florida?
Nobody. I just started doing my own.
He just went to the bar.
Okay.
He was paid by the hour. We established that in episode 1.
Here's something that has never been discussed. They're in the area down there. Staked out the condo, nothing. So I started to go to bars in the area as well, just on
Snooping
the
around.
chance.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I looked up from across the bar and saw someone that, from a distance, from about here to, say my front door, in a crowded bar. And I looked up, and
20 yards.
and it seemed, I thought I saw John Hawkins.
No way.
Yeah. And I
Was his hair still long or had it
Yeah.
been cut?
still, still.
Long and curly.
Good question. I wonder if it was long or short. It was the face. And then I looked up again, and gone. I immediately.
Would John Hawkins have recognized you at the time?
No.
Did
no.
he see you clock?
Just
clock
like a
him or
movie.
something?
What?
Did he see you clock him?
Clock him?
You know, you look at him.
Maybe. I don't know. I saw. Well, then again, it might not have been him. But in my gut, I felt that I had just seen him.
Did you go after what you
No,
thought? was him?
I looked down for a second, like holy shit, and I looked back up again, and no John Hawkins.
Just like a movie.
Just like a movie. And I went around the bar trying to see if he had gone someplace else. And they were in the bar, and I immediately went outside and nothing. And I went, God damn it! And I've never really shared that till tonight. That I thought I actually saw him. It might not.
And
have
you
been
can
him.
remember that as clear as day. I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah. That I thought he was down there
Right.
at that particular point, and then nothing.
Did you find anything else in Florida?
No. We basically went down there just to kind of stake the place out and see if there were any comings and goings, and there were none.
Did you check the trash?
You betcha.
Because you would go right to it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. There was nothing in,
So you're in Florida.
for a little bit, just a few
and
days.
Gene Hansen had allegedly been there, rented in. Very fancy apartment under the name of
Wolfgang von Schnauden.
Wolfgang von Schnauden, and then left. This was about the time the Dispatch was turning up the heat. Channel 4, 6, and 10 were regularly reporting on it on the 11 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock news. What was it that took you to Florida?
The lease, just strictly the lease at that point. This is still early on in the investigation.
And did you think that by finding Hansen you'd find Hawkins?
Maybe, or find something, anything. Just it was just it's a residence in Florida. He owns it or leases it, whatever the case might be. We have to go under the guise that he doesn't know that we know. At that point, right? He doesn't know that we have his lease and we have Wolfgang von Schnauden and so forth and so on. And at that particular time, very early on in the investigation, we didn't know that Wolfgang von Schnauden at that point was Melvin Hansen. That's how early it was with this bag of trash. So we find out later that connect Wolfgang von Schnauden. But at that particular time, going down to Florida, Wolfgang von Schnauden is just a lead. Under my particular thought process at the time, there's a condo in Florida that Hawkins and Boggs have signed off on, and it belongs to some German guy named Wolfgang von Schnauden. So yeah, let's go. It's a lead. Let's get to Florida and see if Hawkins is down there.
Was the place a dump or was it a oceanside?
No, I don't recall if it was a dump or an oceanside, but it was a pretty nice place. It was a decent place. It wasn't a dump, and we didn't go inside. the apartment. Never
Who's
got
the-
inside.
So it was
We.
we.
Huh?
Who's the we?
Oh, there was another investigator with me
Cool.
from Pica.
And her name was?
No, her name.
He said what everyone was thinking.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading the
It
witness.
was not a she.
I've got a picture of Lucy
No, it was not.
Ciferno and
No.
Lisa Temper, but
No, it was
they were
not.
not there at the time.
No, they were.
Okay, so you go to Florida, but hasn't DeSandro, John
DeSando.
Hawkins' roommate, already told you
About what?
That he's alive?
that Gene Hansen's alive?
No, not yet. That's the second time around.
Okay, so you go to Florida, you come back.
Have a
What
second
happens
interview.
next?
All right, come back, have a second conversation with DeSando and talk more and more in length about things. And he starts to really pour it all out. You know, at this point now,
Did he know that Wolfgang was an alias?
I don't recall if he knew that was an alias or not.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest with you, but he did say that John told him that Gene's not dead. Now, still, even if I'm trying to remember the timelines back then. Even if he would have told me that Gene's not dead, I don't think that even then we were connecting Wolfgang von Schnauden with Gene Hansen. Okay. All we were connecting with is the fact that whoever died in Los Angeles was not Melvin Hansen.
Okay.
So
So
Wolfgang,
let's reset the table. Mel Weinstein, Columbus attorney, files a lawsuit for Farmers Insurance Company. Says that the money that was paid, that Hawkins collected, is wrong. Gene Hansen was not dead. He hires a group of investigators. You're one of those investigators.
reluctantly, but yeah.
Why do you say reluctantly?
Because it wasn't supposed to be my case. I wasn't supposed to be involved in the case.
That's your detective. That's your book name, right?
The Reluctant Eye? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is the name of the book that I wrote. It wasn't supposed to be my case. It was. I volunteered to talk to Eric DeSando. If I hadn't opened up my mouth and said what I said that day, maybe he'll talk to a reporter from Rolling Stone. I would have never been involved in any of this.
You would have just walked home.
I would have just gone home for the day and say, "Wow, pretty cool." Wonder
Back to the watches.
Yeah, back to the watches. Which I did go back to the watches.
Yeah.
While I was doing the case with DeSando, but that was the other thing too. I was talking with Eric DeSando, but I had to go back to Chicago and continue that investigation, and then come back in 2 weeks. I'm going to be back in town in 2 weeks. Can we talk some more? So I was doing both.
Going to Chicago as a Rolling Stones reporter from Chicago.
No, going back. No, going back.
That's the cover that
Rolex.
you told him, though, right?
Yeah, going back. He thought I was going back to Chicago as a Rolling Stone reporter. I was going back to Chicago as a counterfeit watch dealer
With a trench coat,
with a
light brown.
Oh. And then that got hairy too. Because when I was gone, one of the weeks I was supposed to be there in Chicago, the flea market got busted, and the people that I was actually in cahoots with and getting to know noticed that I wasn't at the flea market.
The week they got
I
busted.
got busted, and it turns out that the FBI and Customs was doing their own separate investigation because the people that were selling counterfeit items there were using the money to buy illegal arms for something and so forth and so on. Wow. So now we're all working together, but it got kind of hairy when I went back because they said, the place got busted.
Where were you?
And you weren't here. And okay, so as I have in many situations in my life, I talked my way out of it, but it got a little hairy.
Dang, Dino.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was crazy.
That's another episode.
That's another episode.
I don't think you're going to do another true crime after this. You're looking like you don't
I
like
don't
this.
want
So you come back from Chicago.
Yeah. Come back from Chicago.
You could have been a contender. You were knocked out of the ring. What happens next with your interviews?
My interview with DeSando. Okay. The whole thing kind of came to a standstill on as far as my involvement. I followed through with as much as I could with Eric DeSando and got as much information as I could. And everything was determined and figured out once every little piece started to fall into place that Melvin Hansen was not dead. Ellis Green was the body that they used to take his place. Richard Boggs and Melvin Hansen killed Ellis Green in Dr. Boggs's office. Melvin Hansen then disappeared and had plastic surgery. Then Melvin Hansen later was apprehended. Okay?
And Melvin Hansen, for the listeners, was apprehended at an airport with a book on how to change your identity.
Yeah.
With scars on his face.
It writes itself.
With
With scars on his face
like
from
somebody showing
plastic
us
surgery.
plastic surgery.
How to
Very-
hijack an
Money
airplane.
that was given to him by John B. Hawkins
Right. A
in
lot of
Florida.
money. In Florida. A lot of money. More money than you should take when you're going through customs.
And
Over
looking
10
nervous,
over
the
$10,000.
customs agents pulled him aside
Yes.
and figured out he was not Wolfgang
Von Schnauden. No.
Well,
But
you
he
know,
also
it was-
had. But they also found various other IDs as well. He had a handful of IDs, different IDs, but one of them was Wolfgang von
So
Schnauden.
how did that make it back to Columbus? How did that make it back to Pike Investigations?
No, I mean it was just that he was arrested and they had if I remember correctly they had what do you call them, flags, notices at airports for
Email alerts.
variation. Once it was determined that Wolfgang von Schnauden might be an alias for Melvin Hansen, so forth and so on, that was put up there. And Wolfgang von Schnauden was one of the IDs, set up a flag, and so forth and so on. And then he was arrested and taken into custody.
I got to say that if I had that much money on me at an airport, that Wolfgang von Schnauden would be a good name to explain why you had so much fucking money on you.
Do you know who I am?
I'm Wolfgang von Schnauden.
Wait, was it an international airport? Why do
He was coming up from, I think it was Mexico.
So customs, got it.
Yeah.
You think that all that energy they put into this, they could have easily done something legitimate by putting just as much energy into it.
Is
Like run a business.
That
Yeah.
is the one thing.
The $1 million question. Yeah.
Why didn't they just put all that energy, time and energy into running a successful business that it actually was listed in Fortune magazine at one point as far as an article as an up-and-coming company,
Yeah.
and a potential Fortune 500 company that was just exploding. I mean, they were business darlings when they first opened everything up, and yeah,
Could have went legit.
because they were lazy. They didn't want to work. There was work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Working this fraud, though.
I have this conversation with my boy all the time. I am a terrible speller, but because I spent more time trying to figure out how to cheat on my spelling tests than I did actually learn the words, how to spell them. And if I would have just learned how to spell the words, it would have been quicker. I put more energy in trying to figure out how to scan the system, and now I don't know how to spell. I had great grades.
Yeah, I can't read.
I can't argue with you. I look at your run sheets in the morning.
And that's with word for
He
check.
can't be worse than me, though. I'm the worst.
I before E, except after C, dude. It's so simple.
That rule is
And
not
receive.
always
It's
true.
Not
by the
always
way.
Does
true,
not make
but
sense.
most of the time it is.
And now for something completely different.
All right, back to it. Sorry.
Back to it. So, Gene Hansen's found in an airport. He's live. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, the L.A. investigators, the L.A. Police Department, look pretty bad.
Yeah.
They got to change their shorts.
The California Department of Insurance happens to be the investigative body that put this all together. Did you have any time that you spent with the California Department of Insurance?
Nope. 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 And nope.
Did the Ohio Department of Insurance ever come into play with this?
I don't know. Not with me. Maybe with the powers that be at PICA. Again, I go back to the original thing. Talk to Eric DeSando and get as much information as you can. As a result of talking to Eric DeSando, I'll just keep it very simple. It's a simple equation, boys. Talk to Eric DeSando. Get the bag of trash. Take the trash. Copy the trash. Put the trash in the various sections. Find a bunch of information. Start following up on that information. Go back to Eric DeSando. Get even more stories and verifications as to what really happened, especially when Hawkins says to DeSando, Gene isn't dead. And yes, so DeSando now knows what's going on and can't believe that his friend, that he believed was completely innocent of everything, is actually more deeper involved. DeSando claims to have been betrayed by John Hawkins and misled by John Hawkins, and so forth and so on. How much of that is true, I don't know. But he stayed completely out of it. He had nothing to do with any of the conspiracy or any part of the murder. He just happened to be John Hawkins' roommate, and at the time, pretty cool to be John Hawkins' roommate. He was benefiting from all the perks that came along with being John Hawkins' buddy. So yeah, including the attention with the media. He became the wrong kind of media darling at that particular point, and he was loving it. I don't care whatever you say. He was loving it at that particular moment. And when he thought that he would actually be in an article of Rolling Stone, loved it even more.
Yeah. When was that article supposed to come out?
After
Was he expecting it or something?
After I got done with an article that I was currently working on in respects to the emergence of rap music.
Did you write a bogus one? Say, take a look at this first draft.
No, but I came up with a bogus backstory.
I can't think of anyone else better to run DMC.
He is a DJ after all.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that also struck me about Eric was his quest to be known as a straight man.
Mm-hmm.
What was that all about?
Well, when the story started to break that John Hawkins was bisexual, which he, of course, vehemently denied, people started to think that he and Hawkins were lovers as well. And
were they?
No. He wanted no part of that. So, that bothered him. That was questioning his sexuality, his masculinity, and so forth and so on. And he didn't want any part of that.
And for the listeners, it was a different time in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain biases that people held.
There were. It was a different time. And also the fact that, you mentioned that terrible word and that terrible disease that ravaged this country, AIDS.
Sure.
Nobody wanted any part of that. One of John Hawkins's girlfriends, who I interviewed, was completely, I interviewed her to try to get information as to where John was. And she had seen John before he left.
She had seen John actually the night before he left.
Yeah. She was completely distraught and scared to death, because it was coming out that John was bisexual. And she was scared to death that she was going to get an AIDS test. She was afraid that she was going to be sick, and it was terrible. Lovely girl who was just completely also duped and misled.
In addition to his girlfriend, his mom, and his roommate, who else did you interview that touched on this story?
I talked to his girlfriend. I talked to his mom. I talked to Eric. And I think those were the main three that I kept coming back to. I talked to Jackie a couple of times. Talked to
Jackie
Eric.
is his mom.
Jackie's his mom.
And were all three of those in the guise of a Rolling Stone reporter?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. I kept that going the whole time. And there was the relationship between John and his mother was rather, in my opinion, somewhat Oedipal as well.
It's mentioned in the Insured for Murder book by Robin Yoakum and Catherine Kandinsky that
They're great Columbus
dispatch reporters.
Not a sponsor, but could be.
There was something
That there was something different. And actually, when he got out of jail, I don't know if you've kept up with the story, but he went to live with his mother.
Well, there were some letters from his mom
That you saw.
Yeah, that weren't the normal type of letters that you would get.
It's
from,
nothing Yaya would write to you.
Nothing Yaya would write. They were kind of, let's just say, ew.
With it, like on the edge of like you could interpret it as.
Now, did you
Like
ever
Pornhub type stuff?
did you ever meet her in person or just
No,
by phone?
just over the phone.
Just by phone. You never went out to Vegas to
No,
talk to her?
no. They didn't want to send me to Vegas.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
That's okay to send me to
Say,
Florida,
man.
but they didn't want
Get
to
your
send me to
expense
Vegas.
account going.
Another missing
So-
persons.
So, Gene Hansen's found and tried and convicted. Dr. Boggs is tried and convicted. And John's on the run.
Boggs was convicted of the murder, or just
Boggs-
his collusion.
Boggs and Hansen.
Boggs and Hansen were both convicted of murder, insurance fraud, and a couple other lesser included crimes.
John Hawkins was convicted of conspiracy, not actual murder,
Got it.
which is why he got out of jail. Hansen and Boggs died
in jail.
in jail.
So nobody was convicted of the actual murder of the of
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
who?
yeah. Boggs and Hansen.
Boggs.
Dr. Boggs
Okay.
and
Boggs
Gene
and
Hansen.
Hansen. Yeah.
Hawkins took part in a Scared Straight type program in California. God bless
Yeah.
him for that. And he got out early and is still alive and living with his mother in out of a
Trailer park. Yep.
In
Do we know
Vegas
where?
or
Yeah. Where?
out west.
Out west.
Out west. So let's talk. What happens to your PI career after the Just Sweats murder?
After the Just Sweats murder, I go back to doing the more intellectual property cases, and eventually I phase myself out of investigative work as the stand-up career continues to increase and become more successful. I started going to comedy clubs to kind of blow off some steam. Went to open mics. Had the thought, oh, this is fun. I bet you I could do this.
Did you ever
Did it.
incorporate any of this into your act?
Never. The PI stuff? No, never.
because it's so hilarious.
I got murdered for money.
Never.
I mean, insured for murder,
I can
cheating
tell you-
death.
Yeah, you're so happy right now. It's
I
just bringing out
did.
so much
I did
joy.
write a detective novel called The Reluctant Eye. I wrote it 20 years ago, and it sits upstairs. And I've never tried to publish it.
Publish it.
And The Reluctant Eye is loosely based on the Just Sweats case. When I say loosely, I mean extremely loosely. Only in the fact that it's an insurance fraud case, and that there is a body that is found that is not.
You started writing this when we became neighbors. No relation to the neighbors, right?
Right. No relation to neighbors whatsoever. Yeah. And
So do you follow the case as you're out on the road?
I only hear about it. No, I don't follow it. I hear things. I heard that Melvin Hansen was apprehended. I heard that Hansen and Boggs were on trial. And then, like everybody else in America, I saw the America's Most Wanted story.
Oh yeah.
Oprah Winfrey presents America's Most Wanted with
And that's how John Hawkins went down. Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey, and yeah.
She's a fucking sniper, man.
So they talked about the case, John Hawkins, and when they showed him, somebody dropped a dime on him, and yeah, it was another
In Sardinia.
in Sardinia, Italy.
And that's one of the places you said he would go.
I did not say that was one of the places he would go.
okay.
He
Damn
was
it,
in
you could have
Sardinia.
So he
lied.
tried to get out of Dodge at least.
Those who were sexually involved with John Hawkins made a specific note about his anatomy.
Good or bad?
No, just a weird.
Now
quirk.
for something completely different.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do tell.
Crooked.
So,
2, 1,
so when he was approached in Sardinia, he was under another alias. I don't remember what it was, per se, and claimed not to be John Hawkins. And then the authorities said, "Well, drop your pants, drop your trowel."
No way.
And
They put
Sure
his dick
enough.
in a lineup.
You must be shitting me.
He had 2 penises.
and whatever identifying mark was there, and I don't know what the mark was, but that was
was
That's
there.
back the way you forget.
that's no
No one needs
It
to
must have been
remember that.
significant because to recognize something like, that's weird.
Yeah.
You gotta
That's
really
how
look
they,
at that.
that's
penis.
how they knew it was him.
And then
Porky's
they
the
went
movie where
ahead
they do that?
and started and did more things. They enough to bring him in, and then once they brought him in, And they started putting all the pieces together.
This was before DNA was a thing.
DNA was probably still a thing, but they didn't need the DNA back then.
So he was prosecuted in California then? Brought back from Sardinia, Italy?
Yeah.
Now, did you think that he was nautical? Did you think that he would buy a boat and sail
Why not?
off?
I think he. End of the day, John Hawkins was very smart,
No doubt. No doubt.
brilliant. In fact, I mean, you said high school dropout. Yeah, but
There are people like that are so smart. They're like, I don't need this high school stuff, and then they just like leave. high
well,
school.
it's a classic example of being a remarkable sociopath. He's a freaking sociopath, and I'm not saying that in a demeaning way. To be able to believe that everything you're doing is okay and how you're doing is okay, to be able to convince people of who you are and what you are, and to do it successfully. I mean, whatever life he was living, in my opinion, he believed it, and that's part of it. I mean, he was able to shift gears and be a chameleon and be whoever he needed to be to get whatever he wanted to get.
Some of the biggest CEOs are good sociopaths.
Oh yeah, and when I say sociopath, that's not always a negative connotation.
It's just a frame of mind.
It's a frame of mind. It's you have to have a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
But it appeared that people liked him genuinely.
Yes, he's very
so he
charming.
had to give off some empathy. I mean,
empathy.
He told DeSando, "Look, I'm taking money out of the bank."
Yeah,
He was able to go into Fifth Third Bank, convince them that he needed $600,000 cash on a Saturday to go to Atlanta on a buying trip.
Yeah,
And Fifth Third Bank, with millions of dollars in notes on Just Sweats, gave John Hawkins $600,000 to go on a cash buying trip because it was cheaper. He had that much moxie
Yes.
to be able to talk Fifth Third Bank
Yes.
executives out of that money.
Yes, I believe that he had that much moxie. I believe he had the power and the moxie and the persuasion and the gift to get whatever he wanted from whoever he wanted to get it from.
And his roommate believed
Yeah,
that he was actually going on a buying trip and then he would be back.
And that's the power he had over people, right?
men and women.
He can convince them.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, on some.
And is that a sociopath or is that a Costanza? It's not a lie if you believe it to be true.
If you want it to be true. No, I still think it's in the world of sociopathy, not psychopath, and something entirely different. Yeah. But the sociopathic part of it, yeah.
But you mentioned in the first episode and beginning the second, it was a business model. It was a good business model.
Yeah, he stole it from. He didn't steal it. He
wanted-
borrowed it from California.
People wanted to invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was their books wouldn't back up investors. And they knew that the business was going to fail.
They wanted the business.
Ultimately, it went into bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And they took whatever cash they could out.
It's like Springtown for Hitler. They want to make sure that it fails.
Yeah, they wanted to make. They wanted it to fail.
I've made that
It was.
comparison before, too.
It was.
But the concept was right at the right time, and the cash was flowing.
But it
The
wasn't
whole
with
time
the. It
I'm
wasn't
thinking,
with
like,
the.
could we do this now?
It
Just
wasn't with the
Sweats.
right guys.
It wasn't with the right business.
Well, why couldn't they turn this around and become business
Millionaires. They didn't want to.
I don't
Allegedly,
get it. I don't
they
get it.
They didn't like to work.
They didn't like
and they
to
were
work.
Wait,
so
was it-
far in debt.
it didn't
They were
seem-
so far in debt that they had a half off day after Christmas sale
Yeah.
for 2 weeks.
That's how much in debt they were.
That's
what
how
happens
much
that's what happens
extra
today, actually.
They didn't
material
want to
they
work.
had.
Yep.
And they didn't want to work. They wanted to get rid of everything.
They liked all the benefits, all the perks that came with owning a company and making some fast money and being able to. I mean,
Yeah.
John got kicked out of apartments because he wouldn't pay his rent or
He
didn't pay
wouldn't
his rent.
pay his rent.
Wouldn't pay his rent or couldn't pay his rent.
That's crazy.
He would get people to give him amazing lines of credit
Oh my god.
at banks, despite the fact that he was in debt. I mean, the guy was an amazing, charming individual. You got to take your hat off to it on some level, just like, as you mentioned the word moxie. You got to say, wow, okay.
Yeah,
you know
kid,
what?
he's got
That
some
is a
moxie.
gift and a talent. It's a damn shame you didn't use that gift and talent the right ways to be
A successful
businessman.
He'd be a hell of a movie producer, actually.
Yeah, he would have been. And I always wonder about life and its twists and its turns. You know, what if the part in Grease 2 would have stayed in? Would he have,
Right.
And he made money. And
made
he
money.
sort of sold
and,
sweats.
and
He would be
been,
producing movies right
or
now.
Become
wanted to
friends
be,
with Travolta?
There's a part of him, I'm sure, that wanted to be famous.
Yeah.
He loved the attention. He
Yeah,
loved
I
being in
remember
his own
him on those commercials. Yeah, I remember him.
He was
I
a-
could still see him on those commercials. They're cheap
good-looking
VHS
guy.
commercials.
Yeah.
One of the disturbing things in the cheating death book that I read, it went into it a little more than Insured for Murder. Dr. Boggs allegedly sexually assaulted the corpse.
I
Did
did
that ever
Were you
come
involved
to
in that?
your
Yes.
investigation?
Hold
That's
on a second.
Can I get another drink, Your Honor?
the corpse of Ellis Green?
The corpse of Ellis Green. Now, once again, let's set the time. 1988.
Oh, okay, that's
In
better.
LA.
Okay, well,
It
now,
was a different
now it all
time.
makes sense.
In LA.
1988,
It's the 80s. Everybody
Remember?
was the
Come
filing
on.
corpse.
In
Remember
LA.
that, was the filing
Who
corpse
didn't
in
do that?
88, you know?
In LA.
Who was it?
Two gay men
Yeah,
leave a gay bar,
yeah.
and the doctor has sex, and the coroner's not going to look into was it pre or post mortem.
Okay.
And that whole investigation, did you come across anything
No.
with
That's the first I'm hearing about
Gene
filing.
Hansen and Dr. Boggs being lovers?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've heard that.
Or
But not about defiling a corpse or having sex with a corpse. That's a new one on me.
and that was in the Insured for Murder case written by two Columbus Dispatch reporters.
Great reporters.
Great reporters.
This week on Whiskey Business,
They mentioned
filing corpses.
Yes.
That's
may have been part of the reason that
Not sponsors, but
part
could
of the reason of what?
this wasn't looked into by the LA Police Department as thoroughly.
Initially, things weren't looked into because Boggs, still had that level
Of
respect,
respectability.
respectability. So, I mean, it had not completely, at the time of this occurrence, it had not completely deteriorated to the point where he's a piece of shit. He still has
Did you know about the stun gun?
Yeah, I heard about the stun gun.
I mean, other than reading it in the book.
No. Prior to that, no. I heard what I was told was the EKG machine as far as killing Ellis Green, and then there's the whole background of Ellis Green, this poor guy, who was
That's a good name, by the way.
looking for love and looking
All the
to.
wrong places.
Yeah,
Now, did you ever go to Studio 54 to investigate the stories of John in New York City?
no need.
Being
you
a
ever go there
bartender in
before?
the VIP lounge?
Anyway,
Did not. Did not.
Objection. What's
Do you know Donnie Wahlberg?
standing here?
I know he made money selling drugs. I know he had a bunch of XYZ schemes. We talked about the furniture rental scheme. We talked about
Barry Pomeroy,
Barry Pomeroy.
the first victim.
have you ever met him?
Who?
Hawkins.
Nope.
Do you want to meet him? What would you
Yeah,
ask
he's still
him
alive.
if you met
yeah.
him?
Yeah, he's alive still.
He lives
right?
with
No,
his
Hawkins-
mother and,
What would you ask him?
Hawkins was released after 20 years. He was released on parole and then started a program, which when I first heard about it, I got to admit, the cynical part of me went, okay. And I hope it's legitimate, and I don't know if he's still doing it today as we speak, but he supposedly started a program where he was talking to teenagers about how not to stay out of a life of crime and to be motivational and so forth and so on.
Now, did you ever talk to Melissa, who was supposed to take over the company?
I think other investigators did at Pica, but not me.
Okay. And Melissa, there was a letter to John. I don't know if you uncovered it or someone else uncovered it. John asked Melissa to go to a local attorney and talk to him about what she needed to do to take over the company.
Mm-hmm. I do recall that. I don't.
Was there a company to take over, or was it a shell of a company? Was it?
Well, there was a company to take over, but it was a shell of a company at that point. It was like, there's no way to undo what's been done.
It's too bad. Everybody wanted sweats back then.
One of the
And yeah, they overbought. They made, when they were trying to keep the company afloat, they overbought, which is why they opened up more stores to try to dump the inventory. Sure. And as I told you earlier, a lot of these storefronts said, we will build out the store. You just come in and rent the space and put your shop here. We want your shop here.
Sure.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And so they had overbought more stuff than they needed, and they were in a hole.
One of the items brought out in the books and later movies was the FBI's involvement or alleged involvement.
There's a couple bad movies.
Why are we just not getting
B-rated movies?
I'm looking up, by the way, if
make
Hawkins
that
still
B-movie.
doing the thing.
And it appeared to me, in reading through the lines in both books that I read before tonight, that they were deathly afraid of the FBI investigating this. Did the FBI ever talk to you about these investigations?
I'm trying to remember if somebody from the FBI was in the room that day when I made my little speech about
Do tell. Room, speech, set, go.
the room, when I had everything and said to put out my little piles.
The room
Yeah,
where
your,
it happens.
trash.
The room
Yeah,
where
you
it
were
happens.
doing your profile.
The
Before
profile.
profiling was
I
cool.
don't recall if there was somebody from the FBI there or not, to be perfectly honest with you.
Was there somebody from the FBI at one of your stand-ups? Okay.
No, I met with people from the FBI or FBI Customs. I met federal people during the
Federales.
Yeah, the feds.
during the watch incident and so forth and so on.
Yes.
Yeah. That's when I came across those people and had relationships with them. You know.
To wrap
But
up
when-
that B story of the watches, what ended up happening with that whole thing? Did you just close it all out?
Yep,
or-
closed it all out and busted them. But that's like a 7-headed snake. You cut off one head, cut
Still
off two
doing it,
heads,
yeah.
and just another head's going to grow
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
But at least it was something.
So were you aware the FBI was investigating Boggs for the drugs that you had previously mentioned?
I may have at the time, but I can't honestly recall it right now. To be perfectly honest with you, again, this is how many years ago? 30 years ago.
Were you ever called to court in any of this?
Nope, that surprised me.
Were you ever? Did you ever have a deposition taken in any of
That
this?
surprised me as well. Never was deposed. Never went to court.
Was your boss questioned, deposed?
Should I assume so? Probably. Don't know for sure. Like I said, once I did my part of it, once I opened it up, and that bag of trash, let's be honest, kind of opened it up.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff in that bag of trash and a lot of conversations with Eric DeSando that started to lead people down the path to where everything ended up the way that it ended up. But as the longer it took and the longer Hawkins stayed on the run, the further away I got from the case.
Gotcha.
I started to do stand-up and then only stand-up. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, Pica had an office in Los Angeles. And to supplement my income, I took cases out in L.A.
No way.
as well.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You were a gumshoe in L.A.
I was a gumshoe in L.A. And one of the cases in L.A. was an interesting case, too, where the client was a legitimate pornographer. And once again, it was an intellectual property case. And he was making porno movies.
Star Wars, right? About
Star
Wars
and he was pissed off that somebody was bootlegging his movies. So he wanted to find out who was bootlegging his product.
From like day one until
And we found out.
they go to prison. We're talking 2 years, 3 years. Like what? How long is this window?
It starts in 1988,
8
and it doesn't end until
90.
John is found in Sardinia in 1992. I believe.
92. Yeah.
So it's quite a run.
And
Yeah,
then
those are the
then
years
you
I was
have
here.
to wait a year.
And when
or
did you
two
start
for
at
the trial.
1995?
94.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I remember this specifically because I came to Columbus about 87. I met you probably 89-ish, somewhere in there. But I remember this case specifically because I was very new to the area and I was watching news all the time, trying to learn about the area. So yeah, I remember this.
They love their sweats here in Columbus.
I do. Oh my
You know,
God.
it was like,
their sweats.
and when you look at in hindsight, you know, was I a big part of it? Yeah, in the beginning. And as it went on, still a big part of it? No.
But you're not that's not your job. You weren't a FBI agent to, you know what I mean?
No. My job, which
Right.
I was very good at, was my job, and to this day, was I was able to talk to people, get information from people, profile people, and see things that other people might not have been able to see. I don't know if I believe that Eric DeSando was as not in the know as he claimed.
Now, Eric DeSando told the reporters at the Columbus Dispatch that John B. Hawkins was living in Lancaster with a bunch of male strippers. One who went by the name of Tom Thunder,
Tom Thunder.
and one who went by the name of Dallas.
Dallas, yeah, I heard about Dallas. Yeah, Dallas was the name that popped up on a regular basis. Tom Thunder, not so much, but Dallas.
You got to remember the hell out of Tom Thunder.
Yeah,
Tom Thunder. He brings the lightning.
but Dallas.
So did you ever go down to Lancaster to find these male strippers?
I did make some phone calls to try to get a hold of people unsuccessfully, but I never went down to Lancaster to actually check things out. I mean, Eric DeSando, you kind of just go where the gold was at that particular point. And
Sure.
and the gold was DeSando.
Now, Eric also informed the reporters at the Columbus Dispatch that there was a OSU cheerleader by the name of Nellie who was Russian
Russian, Nelly
and
the
had
Russian.
a brother named Oleg.
Yeah. They seem to kind of come in and out of things a little bit, and they you know, when I read back over old reports that I have upstairs, they pop in and out of situations, but never enough to hold any
There's no stickiness to it.
stickiness to it, right?
They're just around.
They're around and maybe aware, but nothing, you know, just again, two more people that were caught up in the web.
Yeah.
Was it a misdirection? Was it?
I don't think it was a misdirection. I think they knew John Hawkins, and I think they knew about John Hawkins. I think they got caught up in John Hawkins just like anybody. I don't know what he.
Now, Oleg allegedly had an in on death certificates and birth certificates.
Yes.
And changing names.
And he was able to do that. Yeah. So maybe that was one of his go-tos, but he claims that he didn't. He claims that he didn't do any of that stuff for John Hawkins.
Was DeSando making this up, or was Nellie and Oleg real people?
Oh, I think they were real people. But again, you know, DeSando played his cards pretty close to the vest, and I think whenever it looked like there might not be any more attention brought to him is when he would release more fun stuff. Well, here, how about this?
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's
This
still
DeSando
alive.
guy?
He supposedly has a talent agency of some sort out in California as we speak.
Really?
That grooms, and again, this is just what I hear, that grooms young ladies for beauty pageants.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
Is there anything that you are worried about now? You know what I mean? Like, I think everything's behind you. There's nothing that's gonna come back and bite you in the ass.
Well, this podcast,
podcast.
is.
Well,
Yeah,
well, no, I mean, legitimately, if the Russians
Nobody
hear this
knows
podcast,
shady-
everything's
yeah.
okay.
No shady guy in Argentina
Yeah.
looking at you.
So
The
Dallas,
real Wolfgang von Schnauden. That's who I'm afraid
He's in
of.
Argentina.
I'm afraid of the real
Johnny
Wolfgang
Thunder
von
or
Schnauden. He's 97 years old now, but
a couple of closing questions. When California changed this to a homicide investigation, were you or your employer ever questioned about it?
in respects to what?
We're changing this to a homicide investigation from a insurance fraud.
Yeah. So now finding Hawkins is even a bigger deal. Yeah. Right? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, well, California obviously changed their mind a year or two after the murder had occurred. And when they changed it from this is a death of natural causes, he died of a heart attack,
to an
to a
actual
homicide.
murder. Yeah, well, sure. Did the stakes go up? Is that what you're asking me?
Did you know?
Yeah.
Did the stakes go up for you? Were you
Were you questioned?
were
by
you
the-
called on the carpet about this?
No, I wasn't called on the carpet about anything. Nope. I mean, like I said, in the beginning, I did everything that I did to open it up. How it continued after that, would I have liked to have been more involved in it? Yeah, but I wasn't. I was pushed off into other directions, and everybody else went and handled it the way they handled it.
So the company you work for basically shielded you from everything.
No.
'Cause you're an asset, right?
No,
Why would
yeah.
they put you in front of people? I'm just curious.
Don't know.
Okay.
Maybe because I was doing a good job with the other stuff that I was doing, and I mean, there was only
Now, you
so much of me to go around.
have to remember that their main focus is intellectual property research.
Right.
They got called in by a local Columbus attorney
Mm-hmm.
to represent an insurance company.
Right.
On a questionable death.
We did insurance fraud cases.
Right.
We did insurance fraud. We did insurance fraud on that level, and we also did insurance fraud cases with people that had claiming to have bad backs, and couldn't work, and
Sure.
had to go to other places and seek out people and get them on videotape doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing in order
Like
to
that Brady Bunch episode where he drops the briefcase and he turns his head and everybody knows that he's faking it.
Before we
kind of like that.
Yeah, the Brady
end
Bunch.
episode 2 here, a couple of questions.
A couple of questions, sure.
Episode 3.
There had to be some life lessons in insured for murder, cheating death, that are pretty hard for a 25-year-old to grasp.
27.
28.
27, 28.
29.
Whatever it takes.
Well, yeah, exactly.
For someone in their 20s to grasp. Looking back, as an elderly statesman of Columbus, Ohio,
Oh, that hurt. That hurt bad.
Seasoned.
well seasoned,
like to say least season, yes.
You're right on all accounts, boys. An elderly, seasoned statesman, yes.
life lessons.
Yeah, what about him?
What'd you learn from this, Dino?
About this?
About life, about business, about insurance, about death, about taxes, about everything.
I think what I learned is probably, especially now looking back, my father always said that there's only a handful of things that he said to me that resonated in the time I spent with him. But one that always resonated with me was that the Tripodises have what he called a third eye. A third eye that is able to see past the bullshit. A third eye that is able to determine and see something that is not evident to everybody else. And when I started to do this is when I think the third eye concept really came into play. Because as I listened to Eric DeSando and started to read all these letters, I think it was the third eye that kind of went a little deeper with everything. And then I started to, my father also said that, that with the third eye, you have the ability, if you choose to actually think like the person you are looking at. And I think that I started to try to think like John Hawkins. Where would I go? What would I do? Where would I go next? Which led me to that initial little conversation where I said, I'm not going to be a successful fugitive because I can't stand to be by myself. I'm used to being around people. I'm used to being loved by people. I'm used to being adored by people. There's no way that I can just go out on my own, not yet anyway, and survive this without being around people that believe me and care about me and love me. Now, as time went on, I think he adapted and learned how to create a new person even better but then again, what did he do as a new person? He probably still kept some of those initial qualities that helped him succeed as far as getting people to love him, embrace him, and care for him and adore him and so forth, maybe as another person. So I think to answer your question in a very long way, I think the one thing that I've kept is the third eye. And my only regret about the third eye in my own life is that I don't listen
Suffer
to it.
fools.
I don't listen to it enough.
You don't suffer fools. You've got good friends that surround you.
Yeah, but
on
I
a
don't
daily
listen to
basis.
I don't listen to the third eye and the voice that the third eye gives. I give people the benefit of the doubt too much.
I'm not validating your third eye, but I work with you every day. I see your everyday read the room. You know what I mean? There's very basic permutations of your third eye that I see you activate every day.
Yeah, and
I guess I'm just
you know what
agreeing-
I'm talking
yeah,
about.
I guess I'm agreeing to you. Yeah, you're not a psychic. You don't have ESP, and you don't ESPN.
no,
He does have ESPN. I come over here to watch it sometimes.
yeah, there's.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think you do live by those a little bit of just.
I do, but I don't think I've utilized them enough to my advantage, and maybe it's because I don't want to. I don't know. When I heard that John Hawkins was out and on parole, and when I heard he was out, and some people asked me initially, do you think any of these guys are going to come after you? Why are you going to come after me?
Yeah,
I didn't do anything. I didn't put you in jail.
No, I think he'd be a very good person to interview on this podcast. And I do think that although it may be by Zoom, I think he would do it.
And you know what, Dino? That brings me back to something I asked you, and you totally disregarded it. If you were in the room with John Hawkins and you had one question to ask him, what would you ask him?
Well, the generic one would be why,
Yeah.
but a deeper question would probably be the follow-up would be, why didn't you want to
succeed?
Why didn't you want to succeed? Yeah, why didn't you want to put in the work?
Wall Street, Fortune 500 company.
Why didn't you want to go the route that could have given you everything you wanted, power, success, and more?
Champion,
Yeah,
Reebok, Nike.
everything,
just sweats.
Just Sweats.
Why didn't you want to go that route? That would probably be my biggest
That's a
question.
good
Is why
question.
why didn't you choose
Yeah.
the well, I guess the path of least resistance
Sure.
was what, going with the scam as opposed to doing the work.
The scams had worked. They worked in New York. They worked with insurance scams, with cars, with fires, with whatever. It was an easy way to money, and it clearly was planned. They applied for multiple insurance policies. They knew that there was going to be a way out with the key man insurance policy.
I wish I was on this case from the very start to the very end. I wish I could have written a book about everything from point A to Z, but I wasn't. I was in the beginning of it. I was in the genesis of this thing, and was fortunate enough to be able to find Eric DeSando and talk to him and get this information and start something. And I think I honestly didn't think that much of it back. I still don't think that much.
This is just
of
a
it.
chapter of your A to Z. You know what I mean?
I didn't think that much of it. I thought I was just doing it. I don't mean to sound,
doing
like
a gig.
being humble or whatever the case might be. But, I've heard people exaggerate what I did to a certain level, and I've pulled back on it and said, no, I told you what I did. I wandered in, I heard something, I raised my hand and said, hey, what about this? okay, give it a shot. I gave it a shot. It worked. And then it continued to work with more conversations. I ran across cassette tapes, micro cassette tapes of conversations upstairs with myself and Eric DeSando talking about, shit. And I listen to those tapes and I hear his voice and I'm like, man, that guy was just living in the moment too. He was living in the moment of, seeing where everything was going to go and how he was going to eventually benefit from it, if he could benefit from it.
Right.
Somehow, some way.
Well, sure.
You know,
He was how old at the time?
He was in they were all my age, weren't they?
20s, yeah.
They're all
Even
in-
the
everyone
reporters
was
were
in
in
their
their 20s.
Except
Right.
for Hanson. Hanson was older man. Hanson was an older man who was a lonely man. He was, that's a sad story too. I mean, that's a guy who
Died in prison.
died in prison, but what did he want out of life, really? He wanted love. He wanted love. He wanted to be loved. He fell in love with John Hawkins. He fell in love with the wrong guy. And because he was in love with him, would do just about anything he needed to do in order to keep that love.
Sure.
And that's a sad story in itself, What do you need me to do, John? What have I got to do to stay in your life?
So how did you go from married, loss prevention specialist, to PI,
Yeah.
to out on the road,
Mm-hmm.
doing stand-up,
Mm-hmm.
chasing murderers down,
Yeah.
to Sunny 95?
It's a good question.
How did that happen? That you went to Light Rock?
Everything kind of connected to the next thing. I've always made the joke, but it's not really a joke, is that I haven't chosen my careers so much as my careers have chosen me.
Sure.
And that's how it was with investigative work. Someone approached me, and I said, sure, I'd be interested. And then I ended up being pretty good at it on a lot of different ways because of the third eye, because I was able to assimilate. It's kind of weird. I think in another life, in another world, I probably would have been a damn good criminal.
Right. See, and the funny thing is the next question out of my mouth would be, are you sad that you were never a police detective? Because you've got the third eye, because you understand the criminal mind, because you can think 3 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm. All the time. I actually applied to be I think one of the reasons I took the investigative job is because I did apply to be on the Columbus Police Department. And they run a very thorough background check on you and your family and everything else. And on my father's side of the family, there's, let's call it a somewhat larcenous lot, for lack of a better description. And I think that at the time when it was very hard to get on the Columbus Police Department,
Now, they might take you now.
You got a good chance, Dino.
I didn't make the cut on that particular. I was extremely disappointed because that was my aspiration initially, was to get on the police department, do my due diligence, work hard, and eventually get to where I would be working things all the time.
You're gonna be fish.
Yeah, I wanted to. I did. Yeah. So when the investigative opportunity came around, and that disappointed me. I think to the point where I didn't try again, and I wish I would have. If I had some regrets, I wish I would have gone back and tried again.
Now, is larcenous? Is that the one with fire or
That's arsonist.
That's
arsonist?
arsonist.
Okay,
I
okay,
said
gotcha.
larcenist is, and they had a streak of larceny.
Larceny,
down,
gotcha.
Would you say Larcenist Crew? What was it? That was a good band name.
The larcenist crew.
Yeah.
Oh, let's. I mean, my father was.
That's another podcast.
That's another
Another
podcast. Yeah.
Another true crime one that we won't
So we
do
brought-
because this is taking a lot out of you, Dino. I can
we
tell,
got,
man.
We got the ring, we got the third eye, and we got the. I could have been a contender
I could have been a detective. I could have been a
instead of a
detective.
morning Host or DJ?
DJ.
Oh yeah, and that happened because of stand-up. So yeah, so investigative work was that, and then I went to the clubs to chill out, and then started doing open mics. Won an open mic as a comedian, then won a comedy competition, and then the comedy competition got me 13 weeks of work at the Funny Bone twice a year. So as an investigator, I now had 26 weeks of work on the road as a comic.
Nice.
And eventually I decided to stick with the comedy and started doing less investigative work until I moved out to LA and was back to not making a lot of money again because I wanted to stay in LA and work the clubs there. And Pica had an office, so do you want to work and do some side work? I said, yeah. So I started doing investigative work again, the pornography case being one of them, so forth. And then
Do you have any documents of that that case? Just for research sake.
bootlegs tape. Oh no! But God, I had to go to every disgusting porno shop in Los Angeles. Twice, 3 times sometimes. That's the first time I saw a plug-in vagina.
What?
That's the first time I ever saw a plug-in vagina. I did. I was like, and I inquired about it, and I go, "Is this what I think it is?" And the guy went, "Yep." I go, and I felt like
They got USB plugs nowadays.
who was in Jaws? Robert Shaw, Quint.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I felt like him when I was in the porno shop. I'm going when he's talking to Hooper about the Shark Tank.
Yeah.
He's like, so you plug the vagina into the wall. Dick goes into the vagina.
Yeah.
You squirt into the vagina that's in the wall. And I'm like, farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies.
That's a new bit, by the way, Dino. New bit.
It's a new bit, yeah. But long story short, we found the bootleggers, blah, 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 the end. That story. And then Sonny was, as a comic, I would visit the show on a regular basis when I was in town, and I would always do well. And then I started doing phone-ins from the road. Dino's on the road. Where are you at this week? I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, and do a couple bits.
Cool.
And then when they needed a co-host in '94, they called and asked if I wanted to do it, and I said no. I said no twice. Third time I said yes.
Nice.
Came to Columbus in '94.
That's his history.
All of that connective tissue leads to you, Bill Mattis.
Yeah, and then Johnny
Then
and I,
moved
then we
here.
started making movies.
Yeah.
And Johnny and I have made movies together. And
Yeah.
now I'm making this movie. You know, I don't know. I only got a couple chapters left.
Well, who was going to play you in the movie?
There's not going to be any movie.
No, like like
about
the
me.
whole.
We
thing
talked
with you
today on
tucked
the
in
air about
movie.
what you want your legacy to be when it's all said
You
and
never
done.
said yours, did you?
I kind of did, but I liked yours better, so I left it at that.
Yeah. Mine is I want to make Halloween a national holiday.
Half
But we
a
gotta-
what?
Halloween.
See, we got to work on the name.
Halloween.
Halloween, and he wants
May 1st.
He wants May 1st.
I
Halfway
get it,
to
but that's a
Halloween,
horrible
That's a
fucking
horrible
name.
thing. Halloween. It
Halloween
conjures up
sounds
a
like
lot of-
half a
It
dick.
sounds
Halloween.
horrible.
Yeah, we told me.
I didn't name it. That's just what it's called.
When you see it
Halloween.
spelled out, it makes Halloween.
Okay, Halloween.
But when you say it out loud, Halloween,
Doesn't make sense.
which is what you are.
I'm Halloween.
Halloween.
My kids celebrate Summerween, which is June 27th.
That's
All
better.
right, okay.
Halloween.
We're working on
See,
We
it.
you say
carve
Summerween,
watermelons
It just sounds like
into
somebody singing a
jack-o'-lantern.
Sinatra song with a speech impediment.
Halloween.
The summer wind came blowing in.
It's whiffed
From across the
quaff.
sea.
And now back to our regularly scheduled program. So,
Yes.
We go off on Jag. Sorry, Bill.
Dino.
If somebody came to me with a problem, much like they did recently, because you said you still work for him, like you know, I would, if I had the time, I would, if it intrigued me,
Yeah.
I would do it.
You still have a hotline for your detective agency, a landline. Nobody knows the number, though, except the people that
I'm
need
gonna edit
it.
this out if you don't want it, but answer that question.
Did you put a marker down for me as well? Okay.
What question? What the other? What the?
Is the hotline? The hotline clearly is it for the Just Sweats case?
No.
The phone red?
I didn't
It's
say
a
that.
red. It's a red
Oh,
phone,
I'm just
right?
curious.
So
Instead of shoe.
Let me bring this full circle.
Try to.
So,
Because obviously I've not told you
Bring us
everything
back.
on this podcast. There. All right? I've left some things out. Of
course.
And I'm going to leave things out, and they probably won't be revealed until I die. Because upstairs, it's all written down.
We have to read.
For those people that thought they knew Dino Tripodis
You
before
do.
tonight, a lot has been revealed about his past. In a Harlan Coben novel.
Harlan Coben?
Harlan Coben. Great
Harlan
writer.
Coben,
Great writer.
60 or so,
Plus
nonfiction
Yeah.
books.
I thought you meant age.
Would you play the private investigator, the police officer from New York City, the sports agent, the dashing young friend from the main line in Philadelphia, the victim?
Never want to be the victim.
I was hoping for the victim.
You want to
Actually.
be the victim?
No.
No. Probably the detective.
Oh yeah. There's a glass door with your name stenciled on it.
With a shadow of it backwards on the floor.
Yeah. Tripodis.
And there we have it.
Yeah. Well, the name of the book is The Reluctant Eye, and the premise of that is pretty much self-explanatory.
You were typing that when my daughters were still in diapers,
The
Dino.
Reluctant Eye is a private investigator who doesn't want to be a private investigator anymore, but his one thing is if something really intrigues him, he can't stay away. So even though he wants to branch out and do other things,
Much like Myron Bolitar.
he gets sucked into that's a good comparison. He gets sucked into it, and it's written in a humorous fashion. There's a lot of humor in it, and there's a lot of like I said, it's loosely based on Just Sweats, but very loosely, and the fact that it's an insurance fraud case, and that's about it.
I assume it's written on a typewriter, right?
It is.
Can I read that by any chance? Can we get a copy for the
I
Whiskey
have-
Business Boys?
It has been edited once.
It has been edited once, and my problem with a lot of mystery fiction that disappoints me is when they just rush to the end and everything wraps up way too quickly. And that's what this is. That's like
Same thing with the horror movies. You're like,
it's like the end. It's the end always just seems cheapened to me. Even though it's got a great twist, I got to find a better way, and that's
Interesting.
and that's always prevented me from sending it out there. And now I read it too, and I'm a better writer than I was 20 years ago. So sometimes I think maybe I should just rewrite the whole goddamn thing.
Or just
use
tweak
it as
it.
bullet points.
And then there's that.
Do it.
And with that, we end episode 2 of the Just Sweats murder case.
Sort
in
of,
which
kind of.
Dino Tripodis was
We ended
one of the
100%,
lead
right?
investigators.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your
you
bourbon.
thank you for your questions, even though I couldn't answer all of them.
Thank you, Dino.
But I didn't
for-
want to lie either and say that I knew something when I didn't.
Yeah, and thank you,
know.
Dino, for just being completely so vulnerable tonight.
Open
I've never
book.
seen
I
you
don't know
like
about
this.
that, no.
Oh, I could see it. Like you were on trial here tonight.
You were
ladies and
staring.
gentlemen.
There's a moment. There's like 5 minutes of you staring at your sleeve.
Yeah, and that probably will be cut from the audio, but you
Yeah,
can check it out
maybe.
live on YouTube.
I don't know. It wasn't the most comfortable podcast for me, to be honest with you.
We could tell. I could tell. I know I could. And I want to thank you for being so vulnerable.
And it shouldn't be, because it's an introspective look at part of your life.
And thank you for the whiskey.
Yeah.
Until the next bottle.
Jephthah.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, everybody.
Greg and John.
Is that the end of the podcast? Oh, that was it. Okay.